Chinese warship sails dangerously close to U.S. destroyer in the Taiwan Strait. China says clash with U.S. would be an unbearable disaster. India's worst train crash in decades kills more than 300. Zelenskiy says Ukraine is ready to launch counteroffensive. Berlin calls on China to stop enlisting former German military pilots. Erdogan signals economic U-turn in picking Orthodox Simsek. Iran to form Naval Alliance with Gulf states, India, and Pakistan. Nepal is the world's most polluted country.
Hello, I'm Amber. Thank you for joining us on Funday News. It is Monday, June 5th, and here are your top stories. The U.S. Navy's 7th Fleet said a Chinese warship came within 137 meters of a U.S. destroyer in an unsafe manner when the guided missile destroyer USS Chung Hoon and Canada's HMCS Montreal conducted a routine transit of the Taiwan Strait last Saturday through waters where high seas freedoms of navigation and overflight apply in accordance with international law. The 7th Fleet said the Chinese ship's actions violated the maritime rules of the road of safe passage in international waters.
According to Wikipedia, USS Chung Hoon is an Arleigh Burke-class Aegis destroyer serving in the U.S. Navy. Chung Hoon was named in honor of Rear Admiral Gordon Paea Chung Hoon, who was an admiral in the United States Navy, who served during World War II, and was the first Asian American flag officer. He received the Navy Cross and Silver Star for conspicuous gallantry and extraordinary heroism fighting near Okinawa as the commanding officer of USS Sigsbee from May 1944 to October 1945.
On Sunday, Chinese Defense Minister Li Shangfu said that conflict with the United States would be an unbearable disaster and that his country seeks dialogue over confrontation. Speaking at Asia's top security summit, the Shangri-La Dialogue, dressed in the uniform of a People's Liberation Army general, Li said the world was big enough for China and the U.S. to grow together. This is his first significant international address since he was named China's Minister of National Defense in March.
Ladies and gentlemen, friends, the Asia-Pacific is a shared home where regional countries live and thrive.
Li Shangfu said, China and the U.S. have different systems and are different in many other ways. However, this should not keep the two sides from seeking common ground and common interests to grow bilateral ties and deepen cooperation. He added, it is undeniable that a severe conflict or confrontation between China and the U.S. will be an unbearable disaster for the world.
Indian officials said more than 288 people died last Saturday in India's worst rail crash in over 2 decades after a passenger train went off the tracks and hit another one. A preliminary report has blamed the accident on a signal failure. The Chief Public Relations Officer of the Southeastern Railway, K.S. Anand, said one train in last Friday's accident also hit a freight train parked nearby in the district of Balasore, in Odisha state in the east of the country, leaving a tangled mess of smashed rail cars and injuring 803.
Anand said, the Coromandel Express was supposed to travel on the main line, but a signal was given for the loop line instead, and the train rammed into a goods train already parked over there. Its coaches then fell onto the tracks on either side, also derailing the Howrah Superfast Express. A witness said dead bodies are still trapped in the mangled coaches and the rescue operation is continuing while the death toll is expected to rise.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskiy said in an interview published last Saturday that Ukraine is ready to launch its long-awaited counteroffensive to recapture Russian-occupied territory. Zelenskiy told the Wall Street Journal, "We strongly believe that we will succeed." He added, "I don't know how long it will take. To be honest, it can go a variety of ways, completely different, but we are going to do it and we are ready." On Saturday, Ukrainian forces repelled all 14 Russian troops' attacks in the Donetsk region.
Дуже сильно допомогло. Ми розуміємо, що так затягувати ми не будемо.
Zelensky said last month Ukraine needed to wait for more Western armored vehicles to arrive before launching the counteroffensive. Kyiv hopes a counteroffensive to reclaim territory will change the dynamics of the war that has raged since Russia invaded it 15 months ago. A long spell of dry weather in some parts of Ukraine has driven anticipation that the counteroffensive might be imminent. Over the past several weeks, Ukraine has increased its strikes on Russian ammunition depots and logistical routes.
I always needed time on my own. I never thought I'd be here.
I take your blessings with your heartaches too. It's so easy and so wonderful to know it's you.
学习，一切从今天开始。Funday 英语。
Last Saturday, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius called on China to stop enlisting former German military pilots for the training of its own forces. He told reporters after meeting his Chinese counterpart at the Shangri-La Dialogue in Singapore, the Chinese defense minister had not denied the practice of hiring former German military pilots, but played down its significance. German news magazine Spiegel reported last Friday that former German fighter pilots have been training Chinese military pilots for years.
Der Bundeskanzler hat mich gefragt, ob ich das Amt des Bundesverteidigungsministers in seinem Kabinett übernehme.
Spiegel said German security officials consider it highly likely that the pilots have been passing on expert military knowledge, such as the secret operational tactics of German forces and NATO. Citing security officials, Spiegel said the former pilots may have even exercised attack scenarios that China may find useful for an offensive on Taiwan. Pistorius said he had also pointed out to his Chinese counterpart the importance of freedom of navigation in the Indo-Pacific region in order to keep maritime passages and trade routes open.
Last Saturday, Turkey's President Tayyip Erdogan signaled his newly elected government would return to more orthodox economic policies when he named Mehmet Şimşek to his cabinet to tackle Turkey's cost of living crisis and other strains. Analysts said Şimşek's appointment as Treasury and Finance Minister could set the stage for interest rate hikes in coming months, a marked turnaround from Erdogan's long-standing policy of slashing rates despite soaring inflation.
The apparent U-turn on the economy comes as many analysts say the big emerging market is heading for turmoil given depleted foreign reserves, an expanding state-backed protected deposits scheme, and unchecked inflation expectations. Reuters reported Simsek, 56, was highly regarded by financial markets when he served as finance minister and deputy prime minister between 2009 and 2018. One of many challenges ahead for him is the Turkish lira, which has lost more than 90% of its value in the last decade.
Iranian media reported last Saturday that Iran's Navy commander said his country and Saudi Arabia, as well as 3 other Gulf states, plan to form a naval alliance that will also include India and Pakistan. Iran's Navy commander Shahram Irani was quoted as saying, "The countries of the region have today realized that only cooperation with each other brings security to the area." But he did not elaborate on the shape of the alliance that he said would be formed soon.
In March, Saudi Arabia and Iran ended 7 years of hostility under a China-mediated deal, stressing the need for regional stability and economic cooperation. Iran's Navy commander Irani said the states that will take part in the alliance also include the United Arab Emirates, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, Iraq, Pakistan, and India. The UAE, which was the first Gulf Arab country to sign a normalization agreement with Israel in 2020, resumed formal relations with Iran last year.
According to Oxford University's Our World in Data platform, despite its awe-inspiring landscape being situated along the snow-capped mountains of the Himalayas, Nepal is actually the most polluted country in the world. Residents in the landlocked country in South Asia are exposed to 99.73 micrograms per cubic meter of fine particulate matter on average throughout the year. The figure is nearly 20 times higher than the World Health Organization's guideline limit of 5 micrograms per cubic meter.
Following Nepal, Niger and Qatar had the highest concentration of PM2.5. The researchers said the high concentrations across North Africa are very high, partly due to drier conditions with more sand and dust sources. Rounding off the top 5 countries with the poorest air quality is India, where the population of 1.4 billion was exposed to 90.87 micrograms per cubic meter of PM2.5, and Saudi Arabia, where 87.95 micrograms per cubic meter of fine particulate matter, PM2.5, was logged.
Now let's take a look at the vocabulary of the news of India's worst train crash in decades. Number 1, preliminary, 预备性的或是初步的. After a few preliminary remarks, he announced the winners. Number 2, derail, 使脱轨. The train derailed and plunged into the river. Number 3, mangle, 压碎撕烂严重损坏. His hand was mangled in the machine. Number 4, ram, 指汽车或轮船等的和什么什么相撞或是撞击. 2 passengers were injured when their taxi was rammed from behind by a bus. And that's all for today's Funday news. Be sure to tune into Funday News from Monday to Friday and click the link below to join Funday for free. I'm Amber, your host, and I'll see you next time.